story begins by showing a massive stadium standing on a remote island, right in the middle of the ocean. This place holds a secret that truly defies the limits of human reason. There, thousands of visitors are seen focusing their attention on the main arena.
Hello, Australia Vice President, and I am Claire. Our DNA experts.
At a signal from the staff, a giant great white shark is slowly hoisted into the air to serve as bait. Right before their eyes, a creature called the Mosasaurus swallows its prey whole, leaving nothing behind. The extraordinary sight makes the entire crowd cheer in awe, believing they are witnessing the pinnacle of human technological achievement. Little do they realize, however, that what they have just seen is merely the beginning of a massive disaster that will soon spiral completely out of control. In this future era, a technology company called Engine has succeeded in bringing dinosaurs back to life through DNA cloning engineering. In order to reap enormous profits, they purchase Isla Nublar and transform it into a grand theme park named Jurassic World. For 2 decades, the island thrives as the world's biggest tourist destination, visited by millions of people. Yet, after operating for 20 years without any major incident, the presence of dinosaurs no longer feels quite so special in the eyes of visitors. As a result, public interest begins to decline sharply. This situation causes the park's revenue to plummet, while on the other hand, operational costs continue to rise. In a bid to restore its former glory while also boosting profits, the team of scientists ultimately takes a desperate step by creating a brand new dinosaur through the splicing of DNA from various species of the deadliest predators ever to walk the earth. The resulting experimental creature is then named Indominus Rex. Strangely, not a single one of them realizes that the decision they consider to be straightforward will actually give rise to the greatest threat to the safety of everyone in the park. Then, one day, the park owner decides to visit and see the Indominus Rex in person inside its special isolation enclosure. He is both shocked and anxious upon discovering that the creature has grown far larger than expected and possesses a level of intelligence that far exceeds the scientists' predictions. In fact, the Indominus Rex has already been recorded trying to escape several times by smashing the observation room glass. Realizing that the situation is becoming worrisome, the park owner ultimately calls for Owen, a former Navy serviceman now working as an animal behavior specialist at Jurassic World, to head to the location immediately. At that time, Owen was in the western quarantine paddock, attempting to control 4 velociraptors using only hand signals and the tone of his voice. Remarkably, he managed to make these dangerous predators obey his every command. However, at that very same moment, Owen had no idea that the real trouble had not even truly begun. Not long after, the atmosphere in the raptor area suddenly descended into chaos when a new employee made a critical and fatal mistake.
Oh, hey. You're the new guy, right?
Following that tense incident, Claire then took Owen to the Indominus Rex isolation facility. There, Claire explained that the creature was a secret project, created using the base DNA of a Tyrannosaurus rex combined with various other predator species. Since it first hatched, the creature had been deliberately isolated and raised entirely alone, never having any social interaction with other dinosaurs. Upon hearing this explanation, Owen immediately warned Claire that confining such a predator in solitude would only make it far more aggressive and unstable. Afterward, he instructed the officers to detect the dinosaur's presence immediately using the thermal imaging monitoring system. However, when the system was activated, the monitor screens failed to pick up any signs of life inside the enclosure, as if the massive creature had mysteriously vanished. Anxious feelings began to surface when Owen spotted enormous claw marks gouged into the concrete walls of the paddock. Claire, now growing panicked, sped off toward the control center to track the identification chip that had been implanted in the monster's body. Meanwhile, Owen and several security officers decided to enter the enclosure area to find out how the Indominus Rex could have escaped from the isolation facility. Suddenly, from the direction of their vehicle, they spotted the guard who had previously closed the gate. Now hiding in sheer terror. Unfortunately, luck was not on that man's side. The Indominus Rex detected his presence first, and in an instant, it lunged and swallowed him alive in a single lightning-fast attack. Owen fully realized that a major disaster on this island had only just begun. At the control center, panic immediately swept through the entire staff upon learning that the Indominus Rex was moving rapidly toward the main visitor area, located about 5 kilometers from its current position. In that beach resort sector, there were more than 20,000 tourists enjoying their holidays. Claire was about to sound the mass evacuation alarm. Ironically, however, the park owner immediately stopped her, fearing that Jurassic World's reputation and its financial standing would be ruined if panic spread among the visitors. Instead, he dispatched a fully armed team to the last known coordinates of the Indominus Rex. Unfortunately, when the team arrived in the middle of the jungle, the Indominus Rex was nowhere to be seen. All they found was a tracking device lying discarded on the muddy ground. Moments later, they were startled by a sight completely beyond their expectations. It turned out that the Indominus Rex had been hiding right above their heads. In an instant, the monster leaped down and lunged at the team leader. The other guards tried firing electric stun rounds repeatedly, but the attacks had almost no effect. In less than a minute, the entire elite armed squad was brutally slaughtered in the middle of the forest. Seeing the situation grow increasingly critical, Owen suggested that they immediately deploy full military force along with heavy weaponry to eliminate the Indominus Rex. Unfortunately, Claire still rejected the proposal, unwilling to let the park, built with so much effort, turn into a battlefield. As a result of this disagreement, Owen ultimately left the control room, feeling deeply uneasy. Nevertheless, after reviewing the satellite monitoring data showing that the monster's position was drawing ever closer to the tourist area, Claire finally made the decision that had become truly unavoidable.
This is a phase 1 real world.
I repeat, this is a phase 1. Bring everyone.
At the same time, two brothers, Zach and Gray, were happily enjoying a ride in an automated glass sphere vehicle crossing the open grassland.
You'll be fine.
Meanwhile, Claire, who had just realized that her two nephews were still outside the safe zone, was immediately overcome with panic and tried to reach them by phone. Unfortunately, the communication network was beginning to fail due to the emergency situation unfolding across the entire island. When checking the vehicle data, Claire finally learned that only one glass sphere car had not yet returned to the station, and that vehicle was carrying her two nephews. While all security personnel were busy dealing with the unfolding crisis, Claire finally pleaded with Owen for help in finding her two nephews. Meanwhile, Zach and Gray had stopped their glass sphere vehicle in a forested area teeming with a herd of Ankylosaurus. As the two were casually observing their surroundings, the younger brother suddenly noticed something horrifying through the reflection of the vehicle's darkened glass. When they turned around, the Indominus Rex was already standing right behind them, staring with an eerily cold, red-eyed gaze. After successfully overpowering an Ankylosaurus, the Indominus Rex turned its attention back to their vehicle. The monster began using its massive claws to tear through the thick glass layers of the car, as if it were merely a toy. The two brothers desperately tried to flee with all their might. However, their escape was abruptly halted at the edge of a towering cliff, beneath which a waterfall cascaded into fiercely rushing rapids. Just as the Indominus Rex's jaws were about to snap down on them from atop the cliff, Zach and Gray made a desperate decision. They leaped freely into the churning waters far below. That bold choice ultimately managed to save their lives from the deadly threat.
We jumped.
Several hours later, Owen and Claire finally arrived at the site of the battle. There, they witnessed a truly horrifying scene. Dozens of herbivorous dinosaur carcasses lay scattered across various corners of the area. Strangely, however, not a single piece of meat from any of the bodies had been consumed. This disturbing fact sent Claire's fear soaring to new heights. The tension grew even more intense when Claire discovered the glass sphere vehicle, now shattered into pieces, along with her nephew's cell phone lying at the scene. Yet, amid the panic, Owen found a glimmer of hope upon spotting two distinct pairs of human footprints still clearly visible. They then followed the trail and concluded that the two boys had most likely survived after escaping the Indominus Rex's pursuit via the waterfall route. As the massive disaster now loomed unmistakably before them, the owner of Jurassic World finally gave his approval for the use of heavy weaponry. He even personally piloted the company's attack helicopter, which had been equipped with machine guns, to hunt down the Indominus Rex from the air. It did not take long for the aerial team to locate the monster, which was running through an open forest area. Just as the helicopter began unleashing a barrage of gunfire toward it, the Indominus Rex suddenly changed direction and crashed through the entrance of a massive glass dome structure, the enclosure housing hundreds of flying dinosaurs known as pteranodons. The sudden appearance of the giant monster, combined with the relentless barrage of machine gun fire, instantly sent every winged dinosaur inside the dome into a state of panic. They burst out through the shattered roof and immediately attacked the combat helicopter hovering nearby. The assault caused the helicopter to lose control before ultimately crashing and exploding in a massive fireball. Meanwhile, Zack and Gray, having managed to reach an old facility deep in the jungle, discovered a long-abandoned military jeep. Fortunately, they were still able to start the vehicle's engine and drive it along the forest trails, eventually arriving safely at the resort's main gate. At the same time, Owen, fighting his way through the chaos, finally managed to find Claire's two nephews. However, this family reunion was short-lived, as hundreds of pteranodons had now filled the skies above the resort area. What was once a place of joy and excitement had turned into hell in the blink of an eye. Amid the panic and screams of the fleeing visitors, Claire's personal assistant tried to escort the two boys into a shelter building. Unfortunately, tragedy struck when a giant pteranodon suddenly snatched her from behind, carrying her high into the air before dropping her into the large pool located in the resort area. With the situation now completely spiraling out of control, a corporate military officer named Hoskins proposed that Owen's velociraptors be deployed as biological weapons to hunt down the Indominus Rex in the jungle that night. Although Owen was furious and even punched Hoskins in the face, believing the plan to be utterly insane, he was ultimately forced to agree in order to save the more than 20,000 lives currently at risk on the island. Owen then brought a sample of the Indominus Rex's scent to the front of the velociraptor enclosure. As soon as the gate was opened, the four intelligent predators moved swiftly into the darkness of the jungle, followed by a fully armed ground force. It did not take long for the velociraptors to track down the Indominus Rex's position in a dark forested area. The entire military unit immediately took up positions and aimed their heavy weaponry toward the bushes ahead. Just as the massive body emerged through the darkness of the night, a very strange phenomenon occurred instead. Not a single velociraptor moved to attack the monster. They simply stood still, their bodies lowered, emitting communication calls toward the Indominus Rex. This was where the laboratory's greatest secret was finally revealed. It turned out that the Indominus Rex had been created using velociraptor DNA components. Because of this, the hybrid monster was instinctively able to assume the position of Alpha, the new supreme leader, over the velociraptor pack. Realizing that their biological weapon had turned against them, Hoskins immediately panicked and ordered the entire force to open fire with live ammunition at the target. However, that reckless decision proved to be a fatal mistake that ended up destroying his own troops. In an instant, the jungle that night became a horrifying slaughterhouse. Within mere minutes, the majority of the infantry forces were brutally killed. Meanwhile, Claire, who was waiting inside an armored command truck with her two nephews, was forced to floor the gas pedal to escape the deadly pursuit of the velociraptor pack. Eventually, they managed to break free and reach the main laboratory complex alongside Owen. They ran into the now deserted laboratory building, after all the scientific staff had been evacuated earlier. Inside the main office, they found Hoskins, who was busy packing up stolen tubes filled with dinosaur embryos, intending to flee without an ounce of guilt. Hoskins even remarked that the park's destruction actually served as solid proof of just how effective the Indominus Rex could be as a military asset in the future. However, before he could finish his sentence, a velociraptor suddenly burst into the room. The terrified Hoskins tried to mimic Owen's hand gestures in an attempt to calm the animal, but his assumption was completely wrong, as the velociraptor immediately lunged at him and devoured him on the spot. Owen quickly urged Claire and the two boys to exit the building and head toward the open field outside the complex. Yet, once they stepped outside, the remaining 3 velociraptors were already waiting, surrounding them from all directions. At this extremely tense moment, Owen made a highly risky decision. He slowly lowered his weapon to the ground, then stepped forward completely unprotected, staring directly into the eyes of the velociraptors in an effort to reawaken the emotional bond they once shared. Owen then removed the metal camera harness still attached to one of the velociraptor's heads, hoping to reduce the pressure the animal was feeling. But just at that moment, the Indominus Rex emerged from behind the building, letting out a thunderous roar that commanded the velociraptor pack to execute all the humans before them. However, because they still shared a strong past bond with their trainer, the velociraptors instead turned to face the Indominus Rex, releasing defiant roars of their own in challenge. The velociraptors immediately leaped and attacked the giant monster. Claire, realizing that their strength would never be enough to bring down the Indominus Rex, ultimately made an extremely desperate decision. She ran toward enclosure number 9, the isolation pen of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and opened the gate. Claire then used a red flare to attract the hungry T-Rex's attention, coaxing it to follow her as she ran toward the main arena, where the Indominus Rex was waiting. Once they arrived at the open battlefield, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, upon spotting another predator, charged straight at the Indominus Rex with all its might. The collision sparked a fierce battle between the two ancient giants, which proceeded to devastate the surrounding facilities. However, just as the fight reached its climax, the massive Mosasaurus suddenly emerged from the water and lunged at the Indominus Rex. With one incredibly powerful pull, the Mosasaurus dragged the enormous body of the Indominus Rex, causing it to fall and sink into the dark depths of the lagoon, thereby putting an end to the laboratory-created creature once and for all. After the threat that had terrorized the entire island was finally eliminated, the atmosphere in the main resort plaza fell suddenly silent. The wounded Tyrannosaurus Rex let out a long, triumphant roar before turning and walking back into the darkness of the island's jungle, showing no intention whatsoever of attacking the humans. Blue, the last surviving velociraptor, stared at Owen from a distance for a few moments, as if offering a meaningful farewell. After that, she slowly vanished into the dense forest to live freely in the wild. The next morning, Owen, Claire, Zach, and Gray were seen at the evacuation area, waiting for the rescue helicopter that would take them away from the cursed island and back to the mainland. And so, the dark tale of the great disaster that struck Jurassic World finally came to an end. In closing, if we look more deeply, the destruction of Jurassic World actually delivers a harsh slap to the reality of modern life. After all, the catastrophe on Isla Nublar serves as a tangible example of what can happen when public safety is deliberately sacrificed for ambition, profit, and greed, without any regard for the risks to be borne. Jurassic World teaches us that no matter how advanced human technology becomes, it still has its limits. When humanity begins to believe it can control nature and create life solely for its own benefit, that is often when disaster becomes the price that must be paid. What do you think? Was the Indominus Rex truly worthy of being created as a symbol of technological progress? Or does it instead serve as proof that there are certain things humanity should never have meddled with? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this kind of movie recap, don't forget to support this channel by hitting the like button, subscribe, and turning on the notification bell so you won't miss any other exciting movie stories. See you in the next video.